Hey, I'm Callie Hogan, and I'm working on my certification to be a food addiction recovery advocate. But I am also a recovered sugar addict myself. My entire life changed 17 years ago when I changed my diet, and that lowered my inflammation levels, relieved some of the sternum pain I'd been having, and allowed me to lose 120 pounds. But even 17 years later, I still felt a lot of guilt and self-blame for ever letting myself get that bad off. And I could barely even stand to look at my own photos from when I was so sick because I felt so much shame and guilt every time I looked at it. But in my classes with Dr. Iflin and in reading her textbook on processed food addiction, I've learned to let go of some of that guilt and shame. And here's why. In the 1980s, some of the biggest tobacco companies, namely R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris, they realized that tobacco use was on the decline. So they decided to get into the food industry. Now, until then, snacking and processed foods were not the norm. But in the 1980s, those companies purchased Nabisco, General Foods, and Kraft to apply the same business models that had been applied to tobacco. In one example, R.J. Reynolds began marketing juice boxes to children using little colorful boxes and cute straws, and their profits went up by 34% in 1 year. Philip Morris took over Kool-Aid in 1985 and had very similar results. So how did they do it? Well, they used the 5 A's of their business model exactly like they did to market cigarettes. Age, get them started as soon as possible. Sugary cereals were covered in cartoons and they started putting toddler toys inside. Did they put it in meats or broccoli? No. Cereal filled with sugar and dyes. One of the first ingredients put in baby formula? Corn syrup. They start us young. The second A is advertising. During children's cartoon programs on Saturday mornings, back in the 80s and 90s when I was a kid, it went from about 160 sugary, fatty, salty food ads per Saturday morning to 560 every Saturday morning. From 160 to 560 over the course of 7 years. This increase in advertising resulted in a huge increase in their sales of colorful, sugary, processed foods. They also made those processed foods free, available. They put them in snack machines on every corner, at checkout registers in all gas stations. You can't even buy your healthy food without walking past the checkout counter full of sugary foods. It is almost impossible now to get through a day without seeing processed snacks everywhere you go. And that is by design. They're also affordable, which is why we all know that you can buy junk food far cheaper than you can buy natural healthy foods. That is part of the addiction model because it has to be cheap so that people can get frequent hits. And number 5, they're full of addictive substances, as many as possible. Through extensive testing, processed food companies found that if they can hit as many addictive pathways in our brains as possible, they are more likely to have a customer for life. So high levels of sugar combined with gluten, loads of fat, loads of salt, dairy, flour, and if possible, a hit of caffeine. You hit on all of those in one meal and a person is hooked. Think of every value meal at every fast food restaurant. Gluten-filled buns with fatty fries cooked in seed oils, caffeinated, sugary drinks, dairy in the cheese. It is a recipe for addiction, and it was designed to be that way. Throw in a toddler toy, call it a Happy Meal, and you have a new customer. What the addiction specialist realized that many of us didn't was, when our smart frontal lobe is functioning well, we make wise decisions about our health, we make great choices. But when the addiction center part of our brain is turned on, this is called our limbic system, the reward part of our brain, then brainwave activities in the frontal lobe slow to a screeching halt. This is why when we take even one bite of those addictive foods, the brakes are off and we lose control. Then we blame ourselves for having no self-control, but that was by design. When our addictive lizard brain is active, then our decision-making is hindered. And this isn't a theory. With technology, we can watch it happen on brain scans in real time. But even more than that, we can feel it happening in our own bodies in real time. And that is why I have never been able to have just one bite when it comes to sugary processed foods. So while the world was telling us that we were obese and sick because we just lacked willpower, or we were lazy or gluttonous, or that we just haven't hit rock bottom yet. The truth is that we were purposefully given highly addictive substances from birth. And then we were repeatedly shown images of healthy looking humans laughing and consuming those addictive products. We were told to eat everything in moderation, despite the fact that the producers of these products knew that was an impossible ask for most people. We were never supposed to be able to eat those things in moderation any more than people were supposed to smoke 1 cigarette per day. Moderation was not their goal for us. Then we were told that eating meat and fat were the problem, that we should fear fat and cholesterol, so we never truly felt satisfied. And then that last step, our frontal lobe was shut down because of the foods that triggered the limbic system to the point that our cognitive and reasoning was too impaired for us to even remember, why are we fighting it in the first place? So please release some of this self-shame, the guilt, the blame that you may have felt about your own eating habits. It was the culmination of deep research, careful planning, and some slick business techniques at work. These people were well paid to be addiction specialists, and they are good at what they do. So what can we do about it? Is this all just me giving permission to blame tobacco companies and tell you to just keep doing what you're doing while you get sicker and sicker? No. So they took over our mirror neurons, and our mirror neurons are the parts of our brain that want us to emulate, copy what we see. It's the science behind peer pressure and why it's so effective. So they showed us these garbage foods for years and years and put it between terrifying images on the news. And you know why? It's because the neural pathways for stress and anxiety are right next to the neural pathways for addiction and craving. And so they know that scared people are easily turned into addicted people. So the news is filled with ads for junk food and ads for pharmaceuticals. Junk food, pharmaceuticals, scare them with the news, repeat. And it's working. The products are selling, the sellers are getting richer, and the people are getting sicker. So we need something better to model. We need to give those mirror neurons something good to copy. We need to listen to podcasts that are about clean eating, and join groups where recovery is taught and actively occurring and being modeled. We need to watch people online living lives like the ones we hope to live someday. We need to read books by authors who have already broken free from addiction, and then surround ourselves with people who actually want us to be well. That is using these mirror neurons for good, and it does make a difference. We also need to stop trying to moderate foods that we just can't moderate. So for me, that meant cutting out all sugars and all carbs. For some people, just like me, that means eating only animal products because that's just how I feel my best. Some people can just cut out anything that was made in a factory. Some people choose to cut out all gluten, added sugar, caffeine, artificial sweeteners, dairy, or any food that ignites this limbic system, the addictive brain, and triggers food binges. And they choose to eliminate foods that give them belly pains, sugar cravings, anxiety, or just a general obsession about food-like products. So each person's actual food plan may look different. I can eat ribs, steak, eggs, chicken wings, pork chops, butter, and I feel healthy, in control, completely non-addicted. So that's the food plan that works for me, but that may look different for you. The main thing is that our food should properly fuel us and leave us feeling satisfied and ready to just move on with our day and do other things. If our food is bringing us pain, inflammation, food obsession, sugar cravings, anxiety, depression, and irritability, then we know that was not the right fuel for us. Things that we can do to break free: lower our stress levels to avoid the craving brain, because a calm brain can make better choices. We can keep out any substances that trigger our limbic system and that shut down this beautiful, thinking, brilliant prefrontal cortex. We can surround ourselves by healthy food and healthy people to give our mirror neurons something helpful to emulate. We can learn ways to cope with our feelings without having to use food as a coping mechanism. Instead, we can turn to true comfort like deep breathing, meditation, visualizing what we really want from life, taking a walk, talking to a friend, praying, or just learning how to sort through hurts from the past. And that kind of work is hard and it's not always quick or easy, but we can learn coping strategies that don't hurt us like those foods do. And we can get help. You don't have to do it alone. There are recovery groups out there like the Addiction Recovery Community, and they offer support for people who are trying to break free from processed foods. For people who want to gain food freedom by using an all animal food diet, I offer support groups along with Dr. Lisa Wiedemann, Bella, Tiffany Davis. There are tons of them. There are even free communities like the one that JC runs, in which people come together to share their struggles each week. Having a support system increases your chances of recovery by about 5 times. And lastly, if you are like most of us and you are not able to moderate highly addictive substances, just learning that it's best to abstain and that there are others of us out there who do better when we completely abstain from those addictive foods can really help. So please, I beg you, stop blaming yourself for a problem that you didn't start. You are a victim of a very strong business model, but it does not have to stay this way. You no longer have to be their unwilling customer. You can break free by using your mirror neurons to do good and by getting help that you need, by filling your body with healthy, nutrient-dense foods that make you feel fed and in control, and by learning to deal with stress and finding new ways to cope with hard feelings and avoiding those substances altogether. And if you feel like I am talking to you right now and you want help, please just look in the video description for the names of the groups and the individuals who would be happy to help, because there is hope on the other side. In fact, hope abounds. It really does. I love you guys, and I hope you know that you are not to blame and that you are not alone and that there is a way out.